Imagine entering a race without knowing the rules. Every morning you wake up and start running. You work harder. You try to improve. You push yourself further than you did yesterday. But no matter how much progress you make, something feels wrong. You look around and see people who seem more successful, more confident, more attractive, more accomplished. Somehow they always appear to be ahead. So you run faster. You set bigger goals. You put more pressure on yourself. You tell yourself that once you catch up, you'll finally feel good enough. But what if the problem isn't that you're behind? What if the real problem is that you've been competing in a race that was never meant for you? Think about it. Why do so many successful people still feel inadequate? Why do people who have achieved incredible things continue to believe they're not enough? Why does comparison steal joy faster than failure itself? Most people believe comparison is a confidence problem. They think the solution is to become stronger, more successful, or more accomplished. But that's not the truth. Comparison is a perception problem. And once you understand what is really happening inside your mind, you'll begin to see why comparing yourself to others has been quietly destroying your confidence for years. More importantly, you'll discover how to break free from it and start measuring your life by a standard that actually makes sense. Because the greatest mistake you can make is not falling behind someone else. It's losing sight of your own journey while you're watching theirs. And what you're about to discover may completely change the way you see yourself. 1. The comparison trap was never about other people. Most people believe they compare themselves to others because they admire them, but that's only part of the story. The deeper truth is that comparison is rarely about other people. It's about the meaning we attach to ourselves. Your brain is constantly looking for reference points. It wants to know if you're improving, succeeding, growing, or falling behind. In many situations, this ability is useful. It helps you learn, adapt, and make better decisions. The problem begins when a simple observation turns into a judgment. You see someone who is more successful, and instead of thinking they've achieved something impressive, your mind quietly asks, "What does that say about me?" That single question changes everything. The moment comparison becomes personal, it stops being information and starts becoming identity. Suddenly, another person's success feels like your failure. Another person's achievement feels like proof that you're not doing enough. Another person's progress becomes evidence that you're somehow behind. But none of those conclusions are actually true. Imagine standing at the base of a mountain and looking at someone who is already near the top. What you don't see is when they started climbing. You don't see how many times they slipped. You don't know which path they took. Yet your mind immediately compares your current position to their visible result. And that's where confidence begins to disappear. Not because someone else is doing better, but because you've started using their life as a measuring stick for your own worth. The strange thing is that while you're focused on how far ahead someone else seems to be, you stop noticing how far you've already come. You forget the obstacles you've overcome. You ignore the skills you've developed. You overlook the person you used to be. And little by little, your own progress becomes invisible. The real danger of comparison is not that it makes other people look bigger. It's that it makes your own growth look smaller. And if that wasn't damaging enough, there's another reason comparison has become more powerful than ever before. A reason that affects millions of people every single day without them even realizing it. 2. Why social media creates an impossible reality. A few decades ago, you compared yourself to a small number of people. Your neighbors, your classmates, your coworkers. Today, before you've even finished your morning coffee, you've already been exposed to hundreds of lives. Or at least, what appears to be hundreds of lives. And that's where the illusion begins. Every day, social media presents a carefully edited version of reality. You see promotions, vacations, perfect relationships, luxury lifestyles, impressive transformations, and major achievements. What you don't see are the arguments behind the smiling photos. You don't see the anxiety behind the confident captions. You don't see the years of rejection behind the success story. You don't see the loneliness, uncertainty, fear, and self-doubt that exist outside the frame. Yet your brain processes what it sees as evidence. Evidence that everyone else is happier. Evidence that everyone else is moving faster. Evidence that everyone else has figured something out that you haven't. This is what psychologists often call a distorted comparison environment. You're comparing your behind-the-scenes reality to someone else's highlight reel. And no matter who you are, that's a comparison you can never win. Think about two people scrolling through social media tonight. One person is looking at pictures from an exotic vacation while secretly struggling with depression. Another is posting about career success while lying awake every night worried about losing everything they've built. From the outside, both appear confident, fulfilled, and successful. Inside, they may be fighting battles nobody knows about. The danger isn't that people share their best moments. The danger is forgetting that you're only seeing their best moments. The more carefully someone edits their life, the more dangerous they become as a comparison target. Because your mind begins comparing a complete human being, with flaws, fears, mistakes, and struggles, to a polished image designed for public display. And eventually, something strange starts happening. You stop asking whether the image is real. You start asking why your life doesn't look the same. That's when comparison becomes more than an occasional thought. It becomes a habit that quietly shapes the way you see yourself every single day. But the most destructive consequence of comparison isn't sadness. It's something far more dangerous, and most people never notice it happening until years have already passed. 3. The hidden cost. Nobody talks about. Most people think comparison hurts because it makes them feel bad. They assume the greatest damage is disappointment, frustration, or low self-esteem. But those are only the symptoms. The real cost runs much deeper. Comparison steals action. And when action disappears, growth disappears with it. This is where many dreams quietly die. Not because people lack talent. Not because they lack intelligence. Not because they lack potential. But because they become convinced that trying is no longer worth it. Think about what happens when you constantly compare yourself to someone who seems far ahead. At first, you feel inspired. Then you feel intimidated. Soon after, you begin to doubt yourself. Eventually, you start questioning whether you'll ever get there. And once that doubt settles in, your behavior changes. You postpone the project. You delay the goal. You stop practicing the skill. You tell yourself you'll start when you're more ready, more confident, or more capable. But readiness never arrives, because comparison creates a dangerous illusion. It makes the gap between where you are and where someone else is seem impossible to close. And when something feels impossible, the brain naturally conserves energy by avoiding it. Why put in the effort if you'll never be good enough? Why take the risk if someone else is already better? Why keep moving if you're convinced you'll never catch up? These questions rarely appear consciously. Most of the time, they operate quietly beneath the surface. Yet they influence countless decisions. Every missed opportunity, every abandoned goal, every talent left undeveloped. At that point, comparison is no longer affecting your emotions. It's shaping your future. This is why comparison is so dangerous. It doesn't just make you feel smaller. It convinces you that growth is pointless. And nothing destroys confidence faster than repeatedly abandoning your own potential. Because confidence isn't built by watching others succeed. It's built by experiencing your own progress. The tragedy is that many people spend years studying the lives of others while neglecting the one life they actually have the power to improve. But there is an important truth that changes everything. Human beings were never designed to grow at the same speed. And once you understand that, comparison begins to lose much of its power. 4. The philosophy of the oak tree and the bamboo. Imagine walking through a forest and noticing two very different forms of growth. One is bamboo. The other is an oak tree. The bamboo seems extraordinary. In the right conditions, it can grow at an astonishing pace. Day after day, its progress is visible. Its growth appears effortless. The oak tree tells a completely different story. It grows slowly, patiently, year after year. At first glance, the bamboo seems to be winning. It grows faster. It rises higher sooner. It attracts attention. But nature never compares the bamboo to the oak. And the oak never questions why it isn't growing like the bamboo. Each grows according to its own design. Each follows its own timeline. Each fulfills its own purpose. Human beings, however, often do the exact opposite. We look at someone else's chapter 10 and compare it to our chapter 2. We compare our beginning to someone else's breakthrough. We compare our struggles to someone else's results. Then we wonder why we feel discouraged. The truth is that every life is shaped by factors we rarely see. Different opportunities, different challenges, different fears, different responsibilities, different experiences, different timing. What takes one person a year may take another 10. What comes naturally to one person may require enormous effort from someone else. Neither reality determines a person's value. Yet comparison ignores all of this. It looks only at outcomes. It doesn't care about context. And without context, every comparison becomes misleading. A seed planted today cannot be judged by the standards of a tree that has been growing for 20 years. Still, that's exactly what many people do to themselves every day. They demand immediate results. They expect rapid progress. They assume that if success isn't happening quickly, something must be wrong with them. But growth has never worked that way. Some of the strongest roots develop where nobody can see them. Some of the most important transformations happen long before visible results appear. And sometimes the season that feels slow is actually the season preparing you for everything that comes next. The moment you stop forcing your journey to look like someone else's, something remarkable happens. Pressure begins to fade. Patience begins to grow. And for the first time, you start giving yourself permission to develop at your own pace. But even after understanding this, many people still believe something that quietly keeps them trapped. A belief about confidence itself. And that belief may be the biggest misconception of all. 5. The confidence myth. Most people believe. Ask most people why they haven't started the thing they've been dreaming about, and you'll hear a familiar answer. They say they're waiting to feel more confident, more prepared, more certain. They believe confidence comes first. They believe successful people take action because they already believe in themselves. But reality works in the opposite direction. Confidence is not the cause of action. Action is the cause of confidence. Think about any skill you've ever developed. Driving a car, speaking in public, learning a new job, having difficult conversations. You weren't confident at the beginning. In fact, you were probably nervous, uncertain, and afraid of making mistakes. Confidence didn't appear before the experience. It appeared because of the experience. Every small action created evidence. Every attempt taught you something. Every challenge survived became proof that you were more capable than you thought. And over time, confidence emerged naturally. This is where many people become trapped by comparison. They look at someone who appears confident and assume confidence is the reason for their success. What they don't see are the thousands of actions that created that confidence in the first place. The mistakes, the failures, the awkward beginnings, the moments of self-doubt, the persistence that nobody applauded. All they see is the finished result. Then they compare that result to their own starting point. And suddenly they feel inadequate. But confidence has never belonged exclusively to successful people. It belongs to people who keep showing up. Even when they feel uncertain. Even when they feel unqualified. Even when they feel afraid. The formula is surprisingly simple. Action creates evidence. Evidence creates belief. Belief creates confidence. Not the other way around. This means you do not need confidence to take the first step. You only need enough courage to act despite the absence of confidence, because every time you do something you once thought you couldn't do, your mind receives a powerful message. Maybe I'm more capable than I realized. And that message changes everything. The beautiful part is that confidence doesn't require perfection. It only requires proof. Proof that you can keep moving forward. Proof that you can learn. Proof that you can adapt. Proof that you can survive discomfort. And once you understand that, a completely different question begins to emerge. A question so simple that most people overlook it. Yet it has the power to transform the way you measure your entire life. 6. The question that changes everything. For years, many people ask themselves the wrong question. Am I better than them? At first, it seems harmless. In fact, it feels logical. If someone else is more successful, more attractive, wealthier, or further ahead, comparing yourself to them appears like a reasonable way to measure progress. But there is a problem. No matter how much you achieve, there will always be someone who has more. Someone who moves faster. Someone who earns more. Someone who appears more accomplished. If your confidence depends on being ahead of others, it will always be fragile, because the standard keeps moving. The finish line never stays in the same place. And eventually, the pursuit becomes exhausting. This is why a different question changes everything. Instead of asking, am I better than them? Ask yourself, am I better than I was 6 months ago? Notice how different that feels. Suddenly the focus shifts. You're no longer measuring your life against millions of people with completely different circumstances. You're measuring it against the only person whose journey truly matters, the person you used to be. Think about your health. Maybe you're not where you want to be yet, but are you stronger, healthier, or more aware than you were 6 months ago? Think about your career. Maybe you haven't reached your ultimate goal, but have you learned something valuable, developed a new skill, gained experience you didn't have before? Think about your relationships. Have you become a better listener, more patient, more honest, more emotionally aware? Think about your habits. Are there small improvements that would have seemed impossible to your past self? Most people overlook these victories because they are focused on someone else's scoreboard. They become so obsessed with the distance remaining that they fail to appreciate the distance already traveled. And that creates the illusion that nothing is changing. But growth is rarely dramatic when you're living through it. Most progress happens quietly. One decision at a time. One lesson at a time. One day at a time. Then one day you look back and realize you're no longer the same person. The version of you from 6 months ago would probably be impressed by things you now take for granted. Yet comparison blinds you to that reality. It convinces you to ignore your own evolution. The moment you begin measuring progress against your past instead of someone else's present, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing validation. You start noticing growth. And when growth becomes visible, confidence starts returning naturally. But there is still one final piece of the puzzle. Because confidence is not simply a feeling. It's something much deeper. Something that is built through the relationship you have with yourself every single day. 7. How to rebuild self-confidence. One promise at a time. Most people think confidence is a feeling, something you either have or you don't, something you're born with, something that magically appears after enough success. But confidence is not a feeling. At its core, confidence is trust. Think about the people you trust most in your life. Why do you trust them? Because they consistently do what they say they're going to do. Their actions match their words. Over time, that consistency creates trust. Now ask yourself a difficult question. Do you trust yourself? Not the version of yourself you hope to become someday. The version that exists right now. The answer often depends on a pattern many people never notice. How many promises have you made to yourself and broken? How many times have you said you would start tomorrow? How many goals have you postponed? How many commitments have you abandoned the moment things became uncomfortable? Every broken promise sends a message to your mind, a message that says your own words cannot be trusted, and when self-trust decreases, confidence follows. This is why rebuilding confidence rarely begins with massive achievements. It begins with small promises so small that they seem almost insignificant. Reading a few pages, taking a short walk, waking up when you said you would, finishing a task before procrastination takes over, following through on a commitment, even when motivation disappears. Each time you keep one of those promises, you create evidence. Evidence that you can rely on yourself. Evidence that your actions matter. Evidence that your future self can trust your present self. And that evidence accumulates, day after day, week after week, month after month. Eventually, something powerful begins to happen. You stop needing constant validation from other people. You stop depending on comparisons to determine your worth, because your confidence is no longer built on external approval. It's built on an internal foundation, a foundation created by the promises you've kept. This is why confidence isn't something you find. It isn't hidden somewhere waiting to be discovered. It isn't reserved for extraordinary people. Confidence is something you earn from yourself. One promise, one action, one decision at a time. And once that process begins, the need to compare yourself to others starts losing its grip. Because for the first time, you're no longer focused on proving your value to the world. You're proving it to yourself. And that changes everything. Conclusion. Remember the race we talked about at the beginning? The one where you wake up every day, look around, and feel like everyone else is somehow ahead of you. For a long time, you may have believed that the answer was to run faster, work harder, achieve more, become better than the people around you. But now you can see the truth. The race was never against them. It never was. Somewhere along the way, many of us were taught to measure our worth by comparison. We learned to look sideways before looking inward. We learned to judge our progress based on other people's results. We learned to believe that our value depended on where we ranked. But your life was never meant to be measured that way. Your journey is unique. Your challenges are unique. Your timing is unique. Your growth is unique. And the moment you stop demanding that your path look like someone else's, you create space for something much healthier. You create space for self-respect. You create space for patience. You create space for genuine confidence. Not the kind that comes from feeling superior, the kind that comes from knowing who you are. Think about everything we've explored. Comparison isn't destroying your confidence because other people are succeeding. It's destroying your confidence because it keeps pulling your attention away from your own growth. It keeps convincing you to ignore your victories, your progress, your resilience, your evolution. The truth is that the person you're meant to become is not waiting at the finish line ahead of someone else. That person is waiting one step beyond who you were yesterday. One decision beyond yesterday. One lesson beyond yesterday. One act of courage beyond yesterday. And every time you choose growth over comparison, you move closer to becoming that person. So stop measuring your worth against lives you were never meant to live. Stop treating someone else's journey as the standard for your own. Stop looking at people who are on different paths and asking why your timeline doesn't match theirs. Instead, look back. Look at the obstacles you've survived. Look at the lessons you've learned. Look at the person you used to be. Then recognize something important. You are already moving forward. Maybe not as quickly as you hoped. Maybe not as perfectly as you imagined. But you are moving. And that matters. Because real confidence is not built by being better than everyone else. It's built by becoming better than the person you used to be. Stop watching someone else's journey. Start walking your own.